We are live.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics and Local. So tonight we've got as my brother Zaid like to say, we've got not only a full show, we've got a loaded show. So up first, I understand, John, we're going to have Deborah Smith-Gregory from the NAACP.
Yep, she's coming on and she's going to be talking about Vote 16. As you probably know, Newark is the one of the first cities in the country to have 16-year-olds vote in the Newark School Board election. Does my sound good? Can you hear me? Or is there a lot of background noise?
There's some background noise.
Okay. Hold on. Ed, talk for a second because I'm going to just work with Deborah Smith-Gregory because that's her right here coming on.
All right. So, we're going to be talking with Miss Gregory. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent school board election, well, the upcoming school board election, and obviously talk about the young 16-year-olds who are now able to vote in the school board election. Because, as you know, one of the issues we've been having here in New Jersey, and particularly in our city, is that a lot of these turnouts have been really, really low, and so we want to try and get the participation up as much as possible. So we're going to talk to Miss Gregory to see what we can get her input on this as well. You're muted, John.
Deborah Smith-Gregory has been fighting for this a while, and the thought is, if you get 16-year-olds the chance to vote, and they're voting at the age of 16, they're going to be much more likely to vote at the age of 18. As you already know, when it comes to school board elections, the voter turnout has been historically low. And that's just incredible, especially in an area where there's so much, right? So there are literally like close to 100,000 registered voters. And in terms of the numbers of voting, it's usually well under 10,000 votes, and many times even less than that for school board elections. They take place in mid-April, and when they take place in mid-April, it is widely seen as being something that um, is that pushes low voter turnout because people don't pay attention to it. Everyone's going to pay attention to the governor's race in June, and the primaries in June, and of course, everybody pays attention to the November race, but very few people pay attention to the races that are not in November, and they're not for big things like the president or the governor.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And what's important is how big that budget is, for the Newark School Board, and why folk ought to have some input, because usually when things go wrong in the city, everybody have something to say. So, it would behoove the city to be more involved right from the door. We're talking about $1.5 billion. I remember when Senator Rice was alive, he was telling us what that budget was and how big it was. So, I mean, that's
But
going to be
it
an
but
conversation
it's
to have.
also interesting because a lot of people don't really get the civics of it when it comes to charter schools as well. $400 million, close to a third of the budget for Newark, goes to charter schools, and we have this big push for Vote 16, and which is and it's premised on the assumption, right, that democracy is important. That democracy, especially in school board elections, is something that should be encouraged. But when one third of the budget goes to charter schools who literally have zero elected accountability, that becomes that I think is always an issue. So I think that
Yep.
conversations about that are also important, right? If democracy is important, why does democracy cease being important when it comes to charter school? Why does it cease being important when you have $400 million that go to predominantly white run, white owned charters, then as opposed to the actual schools within the community itself? So that's always something to think about. But tonight we really do have a packed show. We have we have 8 of the 11 candidates who are running for office I was able to get in touch with 8. Everyone I got in touch with has agreed to come on. So Deborah Smith-Gregory is the first guest, not a candidate, but as the local member of the Newark NAACP, and someone who really pushed the concept of Vote 16. We have at 6:20, we have the Prioritizing Newark's Children team on with Adé Kelly, Shana Melius, and Nathanael Barthelemy. At 6:40, we have the Moving Newark Schools Forward team coming up, and that's Kanileah Anderson, Louis Maisonave Jr., and David Daughetyon. Oh, I have to ask him about his name. Forgive me for mispronouncing it. Daytona Dalton, David Daughetyon, uh, on the slate, and they're on the slate, moving Newark schools forward. At 7 o'clock, we're gonna break from our election coverage, but we're also going to talk to another educator, and that is going to be Byron Arthur. He's the president and board of director of the National Speech and Debate Association and Hall of Fame debate coach. He's going to talk about education, the importance of speech and debate, and his successful career as an educator in New Orleans. And then we have Yolonda Johnson, who is an independent candidate running for the Newark School Board. We have Latoya Jackson, also an independent candidate running for the Newark School Board. And at 8 p.m., we're going to have a conversation about Vote 16 and the school board race. And then finally, we're going to have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop at 8:30. So it is a very, very packed show tonight.
Yep.
Also, if the 3 candidates who I was not able to get in touch with, if you hit us up, we will invite you on at 8 o'clock so that you could also talk about your candidacy. We appreciate you a lot. And Deborah Smith-Gregory is on right now. Hello, Deborah Smith-Gregory. Hello, how are you?
Well, how are you doing? Hello, Ed.
How you doing, Miss Gregory? How's
Well,
everything?
well, thank you. Everything is good.
Well, Vote 16, you were a huge proponent of Vote 16 in terms of the getting kids to vote at the age of 16 years old. I know that you also were pushing a civics curriculum at the same time. Talk to us about this and the importance of this particular race where kids are going to be able to vote for the first time at the age of 16 in the Newark School Board elections. Deborah, are you there? Okay. Well, hopefully she will come back on and jump back in. But again, these elections, I think, are very important because you have, for the very first time, kids being able to vote at the very age of 16. Ed, what do you think about that? Kids voting
Well,
at 16?
yeah. John, let me first ask you a question. Didn't you advocate for that as well at the city council?
Yes, I did. I was one of the advocates for Vote 16 because I thought that was actually very important that kids actually be able to vote at that age. I thought that the reason behind it was if you start voting that early, then you're going to be more likely to vote when you're older. And so
Hmm.
it's a training ground. And we have a whole history in Newark of student activism. Part of the reason why Newark has local control is because students took to the streets. There were over 2,000 students who literally shut down the highway going from Newark to the Newark airport. And that pushed the Republican Chris Christie to talk seriously with Newark Mayor Raz Baraka, the new Newark Mayor Raz Baraka, to start a process by which Newark would actually gain local control of its school system. Because as you know, for over 20 years, the Newark public school system was controlled by the state of New Jersey. So school board elections were only performative. They had no real power because the state of New Jersey ran Newark schools as opposed to individuals within the city itself.
Yep.
So yeah, I definitely supported it. Deborah, are you back?
She might be having some technical issues, John.
Okay. So we'll hopefully we will have Deborah back, and Deborah can come on at 8 o'clock so that we can have that wrap up, and she could talk about what vote what it means. Ed, what does it mean to you? Why is that important to you?
Well, John, you know, for us, I mean, we've been doing all politics and local now going on 17 years. So obviously having young people involved particularly in you know elections and involved in what's going on in their community and having some sort of say so is important for a lot of reasons. One is it make them stakeholders, but more importantly, I think that it teaches them that politics is important and voting is important, and I mean, you got to think that the price that was paid on behalf of African Americans in this country for democracy, and no one in this country has gone through what we've gone through. I mean, you think about the history of voting, and what our ancestors and parents had to go through just to be able to vote. I mean, from the having to count jelly beans in a jar, having to know certain things about this country, and to come as far as we've come. I mean, it's just I mean, it's absolutely incredible. No other group of people have had to go through that. So for young people to be engaged and involved in politics, and more importantly, to be involved in having something to say about who makes those decisions when it comes to their education, all of that is important. So I think that having young people involved and engaged early is a major power move in the city of Newark. But it should be also an example to other cities around the country to see what that could be, for their young people and for democracy, and particularly for Board of Educations in and of itself. So it's important for a lot of reasons, but those are some of them.
Okay, cool. Well, we have our guest here, our first group of people, and they represent the slate that is running on prioritizing Newark's children. That is the slate for Adé Kelly, Shana Melius, and Nathanael Barthelemy. Please correct me if I mispronounce your name.
It's Shana.
Shana. Shana Melius?
Yes.
Yes.
And Nathanael Barthelemy.
Nathanael Barthelemy.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And so, welcome to All Politics Are Local. Thank you for coming on. We very much appreciate you. We at All Politics of Local have traditionally believed in civic discourse and making sure that everyone has good information and can meet the candidates that are running. We'll just jump right in and start off with questions, right? In terms of running for public office. The first question I'm going to ask for everyone is, let's just jump right into controversy. There were a series of incidents at Newark Global Studies that have led to accusations of anti-Blackness, and specifically Black students and teachers targeted by Latino students and administrators. This has led to a series of lawsuits and court cases. The published Creed report by educational consultant Lauren Wells, that was kept under wraps for months before it was released, cited widespread institutional culture of anti-Blackness where individuals feared retaliation for speaking up. Is there a problem between Blacks and Latinos in Newark that has found its way into the school system? And was the district's response acceptable?
I'll go first for us. I remember actually being at that specific school board meeting when it was initially brought to the board's attention. And what we heard as a community member at that time is that things would move swift to resolve it and that the community would be in the know of what happened. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And on this campaign trail, we learned that unfortunately, racism is something that our kids are dealing with across the district, that staff members are dealing with across the district. And the easiest way to do it is just to enforce the policies on hand, but to be clear and transparent with the community to make them just understand and feel safeguarded that this isn't a reflection of what the district is. The fact that it's been going on the way it is, it kind of feels like this underculture of racism, this underculture of discrimination, intimidation, harassment, and bullying is okay. And I think we are all in agreement that with us on the board, we will handle it swiftly. We will handle it as stern as we need to handle it. And ultimately, the people will be transparent about the process. It shouldn't have took so long. It shouldn't have taken a leaked report for the people to get it. It should have just been accessible so everyone understood what was going on in the district.
And the question is really, is there a deeper issue going on, or is this just something that was an incident at the school? How would you deal with like basic issues of, or what is your perception of, as a board member, dealing with issues of race relations, tolerance, diversity, people understanding their history, culture? What would be some solutions if it is still a problem in your eyes?
If I may, so Newark is massive, right? Newark is huge. And because of its size, it's segmented in ways where people find themselves in silos and pockets. So one of the things that we would do is definitely find ways to merge our communities outside of, let's say, sports and competition, but find sustainable and wholesome ways to bring the communities together, to bring the students together. So a group from the West Ward can go to the South or Central Ward and realistically understand what the cultures are and how the cultures are different, and also how we can merge, what Newark is realistically supposed to be.
Okay. And Shana?
Shana.
Shana?
So I think, realistically, in regards to the racism issue, this is not just a local issue, it's a nationwide issue. And I think the main thing is to understand what the problem actually is. Like, for us, prioritizing Newark, our goal is to prioritize the children. So I think more so listening, actually going to global studies and variation of other schools that do have this issue, and kind of finding out what is the actual underlying issue. Clearly, it's racial, but there has to be something that sparked this initial issue in regards to the students. I think, and Newark is a very diverse place. It's majority Black. And as well as it has a history, within battling racism. So I think, again, it's just listening to the students and kind of finding out what the key issue is.
So, the population of the district is growing, and there are new schools opening up. The Michelle Obama School of Fashion Design has opened up, a school that's working closely with New York's Fashion Institute of Technology. They have the School of Architecture and Design, which will open up in September, and Lionsgate will soon open up a school for film. The superintendent in Newark are close to year 7 of their 10-year plans. In your eyes, what needs to be improved, and what things are you most proud of?
You want to go first, Ava?
No. No, you can go.
I mean, improvements in literacy, math, science. Like in this campaign, I've learned so much in my personal understanding and diving deep in what the numbers are. And numbers are a big deal. People can talk about the work that they're doing. They can talk about, what should be done, what needs to be done. But when you look at the numbers in themselves, you'll see that our students are struggling in the basic necessities of literacy, math, science, right? So that would be our main focus, because our students need to be able to read. They need to be able to do math. They need to understand the basic concepts of science. And if those things aren't happening, we're going back in time. We're going backwards. So those would be definitely our major focuses, because our kids need to be able to read. They need to be able to write. They need to be able to do math. As far as being proud, Newark is doing a lot of things, like you said, with the Michelle Obama schools, with the Lionsgate. So there are diversities and different things happening outside of traditional schooling. And that's great and amazing for those opportunities, right? But again, if our students currently can't read, can't write, can't do math, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think in regards to being proud, you know, in regards to us thinking about the future, you know, innovation is kind of like what our slogan is in regards to prioritizing Newark, because technology is going to be taking over the world, and we definitely want our kids to be versed in technology. With, you know, naming the school after Michelle Obama, you know, there's School of Fashion, you know, architecture and design. I mean, these are certain career paths that would actually help individuals. In regards to us, though, and being proud, I think the main thing is accountability. You know, as you mentioned, they're on the 7th year of their 10-year plan, and there's still issues with literacy, science, and math. You know, I think it's important that we get elected to improve this. You know, I'm proud of the young people as well as what they're inspired to do. But the thing is that we got to kind of help them, you know, to be prepared after they get out of high school, what their life's going to look like. And I think that's what we as candidates and being elected on the board can do to help.
Yes. So as far as being proud of what's going on, I think there's being from Newark, we shock the world all the time. So I think in spite of, you know, what the numbers tell us, we still have achievement going on within our district. I do want to acknowledge that. But also when we look at it through the lens of a global perspective, you know, sometimes the numbers are telling us that we're setting our kids up for failure if we're not prioritizing the basics of reading, mathematics, and science, because science ends up being STEM, right? So we're set in a world that's gearing towards STEM and AI. If our kids can't do the basics of reading and understanding math, then they're going to be well behind globally. So what we want to focus on really is those basic things. So when innovation happens, it's really easy for our kids. So it starts with those things. And I think sometimes when we're talking about expanding and opening new buildings, that's good. I think some of the projects have been great and they're advancing towards career paths for our kids, but other buildings are empty. So we have to fix that problem too. And other buildings are overcrowded. So once we figure out the nuances of making sure each school is sufficiently enrolled with an adequate amount of kids, with great ratios for our teachers, when we solve that problem, then we can really focus on the other things like open up more school buildings.
And that actually brings us to one of the other questions I was asking. It's a great segue into it. The governor's race is in full tilt, and predictably, there are always accusations of Newark has over $1 billion budget. It's spending too much money, and we know that in certain years, under certain administrations, at the statewide level, Newark faces budget cuts and budget surplus, right? And so it's saying they're spending $1 billion on education, but third graders can't read. Do you agree with the Republican frontrunner when he characterizes Newark education and achievement that way?
I
And
think
especially with regards to when people are looking at test scores and what they mean and how they're interpreted.
I think at face value, the numbers are the numbers. 77% are below benchmarks for literacy, over 80% for mathematics, and 93% for science of fifth graders. It's not a lie to just say the truth. If we're afraid to say the truth, then we find ourselves putting our kids more behind than they already are. When we call those numbers out loud, what we're saying is we want to prioritize those areas because we know in those areas our kids, if they're thriving, then we know our kids will go off into trades, they will go off into college, and then they will come back to the Newark community. What we want to build in this school system is a robust group of alumni who come back to the city. When we have students coming back into the city, coming back into our economy as the next entrepreneurs, as the next doctors, as the next lawyers, teachers, whatever the case may be, then that's how you're able to grow your local economy. So I have to say, yes, at face value, the numbers are the numbers, and it's okay to say that. But what's not okay is to stay stagnant and not try to do anything in your power to fix it.
Yeah, and I think, as my colleague mentioned, the numbers are the numbers. The main thing is about holding individuals accountable. I think that's, the real fact here is that accountability, as well as, the industry and just the literacy issues. I mean, it was astounding for me, per se. So, I agree with Adé. For sure. And I think if we are fighting for, mental health support and family engagement, I think as I mentioned, prioritizing Newark, we're about innovation. And I think those are key issues that will help these children.
Yeah. And I was just going to add to it, with the budgets being what they are, we should be able to offer a lot more to our scholars. And like Shana said, mental health is important. Social learning is important. And it's definitely about, outside of the literacy, the math, and the science, we have the ability and the capabilities to do so much more for our scholars, and they deserve all of that.
In a segue, we know that close to 1/3 of Newark's budget goes to charter schools. We also are all here with Vote 16, and we know about the importance of democracy in education. A few years ago, when North Star students protested, they went to the mayor's office, disappointed to find that they had no power to change the policies. This may be especially important when $400 million that comes into Newark, the $400 million of the overall budget in Newark goes to charters. Is it hypocritical to support Vote 16 without demanding that charters be accountable to the local elected Board of Education?
Yeah.
So, can I just really quickly, I'm segueing in on accountability, right? And so as we mentioned, prioritizing Newark's children, we want to make sure that we have accountability, especially for these charter schools that are getting this $400 million, transparency, as well as community control. It saddens me that these students were disheartened when they found out that the mayor couldn't do anything for them. And so that's a key aspect for us. Go ahead, Adé. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We're all on the same page. But what I'll say is, we at this point, I think before the conversation used to be charter versus public. Now we kind of accept them. Now the next part of the conversation is saying, hey, you're taking our money. So there's an accountability to that. So we have to advocate for charters to provide more transparency when it comes to their board meetings, when it comes to who's on their board. If they're taking public dollars, then there has to be some public accountability and some public forums, and then public representation on their boards. And we all know that that's just not the case right now. So one of the things that I believe advocating for is a policy that states if you are taking public money, that you need to have at least a portion of your board be voted on by the public.
Okay. And so does anyone else want to comment on that? Because I think we're running. We have 3 minutes left, and I do want to skip to the last segmented question for you. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of information in order to be able to do oversight. It seems like if you're a Board of Education member, you are hit with report after report after report, and the only way to do that is if you're able to process large amounts of information in a small amount of time. What is there about your biography that makes you prepared to be a member of the Board of Education?
I'll go.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead,
I
Adé.
wasn't sure. No, so I had an opportunity to work for a large building maintenance company in the city of New York. One of the things that I did was audits of their budget and of contracts. I also work for a nonprofit in which we do some of the same work, going over grants and stuff like that. So turning around a lot of information, understanding a lot of information in a little bit of time and having a turnover for it is something that I've been doing throughout my professional career.
And so, go ahead, Nate.
Oh yeah, well, for myself, over the past 2 decades, I've worked in education for large programs and large schools, including UVSO, including the Leaguers, where I oversaw about over 100 kids, and the data and the paperwork that went through processing all of their information, the students, parents, how we can engage and service these families. I definitely had to go through and comb through, ensure that whatever services we were providing for our families on a large scale had to be accurate with what they needed and how it would support them in all of their endeavors. And outside of that, just processing information with some of the businesses that I own in regards to music and technology. I have to be able to process those informations as well, so that my mind have to calculate on a different scale and level so that I can process what it takes to, categorize these businesses and technologies and put them in a place that they need to be so that they can be effective in the space that they're in.
And for me, I've worked for Congressman Payne, which we were over 3 counties here in Newark and NJ 10th Congressional District, which was about 775,000 people. I've also was an outreach director in Brooklyn, New York, and I've worked for city council as well. And I'm also getting my PhD. So it's in regards to having the ability to absorb information and basically put it out. We've had numerous constituents reach out to us, and it's more about having the ability to multitask. And I think the 3 of us have that skill. And I think, electing us is going to be a benefit for Newark, not just, just because we want to run, but because we're going to do something when we're actually on the board.
All right, and thank you. And all 3 of you were able to answer. Adé, did you go? You went first, right?
Yeah.
On that? All right, great. So we have one last question, and we're out of time, but we just want you to very briefly answer it. This is All Politics Are Local. It's a hip hop talk show. Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? Just quick answer.
I'll go Jay-Z. We have the same birthday, so it's always Hov.
December 4th.
December 4th.
So I worked in the music industry as a publicist, so I would say Biggie and Tupac. So I have 2, Biggie and Tupac.
So I currently work in music. I love and will always adore the Fugees, especially because I'm Haitian. So
Okay, represent.
Definitely.
All right, so thank you. And one last thing, everyone should, and this is for all the other candidates as well. Tell us like what your number is. Like who do you want them to vote for? And if for everyone, also for future candidates who are on, if you add it to your name in terms of where to vote for, that would be good too. So what number are you on, or what's your letter number, etc.?
I'm Nathanael Barthelemy, A4.
I'm Adé Kelly, A5.
And I'm Shana Melius, A6, and we are prioritizing Newark children.
You're on mute, but thank you
so much. Yes, and also for everyone behind the stage, we have a limit of 10 people behind the stage. So if you're not on, please listen to us on Facebook or listen to us on YouTube, because we're streaming on both of those platforms live. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey. Good evening. And Good evening, and we have two of you here, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we can start. Thank you so much for coming on All Politics Are Local. Kanileah, thank you so much for organizing this at the last minute. I appreciate it. I always appreciate when we're able to do these forums and have all the candidates. I don't have all of them on tonight. We have 8 of the 11. For the 3 I was not able to get in touch with, you see this broadcast and you're like, hey, I want to be on. Just hit us up, please, and we can have you on. We can have you on. We'll give you time at the 8 o'clock hour. Or if you see this later, hit us up, and we will have some time on the segment next week to have you on as well. Uh, so, uh, so thank you for being here. Excuse me. And we're going to jump right into it. It's vote 16. It is the Newark School Board elections, and we will jump right into the controversy first. As you know, there were a series of incidents at Newark Global Studies that had led to accusations of anti-Blackness, specifically Black students and teachers targeted by Latino students and administrators. This has led to a series of lawsuits and court cases. The published Creed report that had been kept under wraps for months before it was released cited a widespread institutional culture of anti-Blackness where individuals feared retaliation for speaking up. Is there a problem between Blacks and Latinos in Newark that found its way into the school system? And was the district's response acceptable?
Got you. So I'm going to actually tackle that first. Good evening, everybody. Thank y'all again for having us on. Putting it plain and simple, the incidents that happened at Newark Global Studies was heartbreaking, and it was unacceptable, right? I myself, who used to work for the Abbott Leadership Institute, was a mentor to one of the students who actually underwent some of what was going on in Global Studies, and was one of the students who was targeted and called a monkey and out of his name, completely unacceptable, right? The fact that the report, like a Creed report, even existed, citing like that widespread culture of anti-Blackness and fear of retaliation, it just shows that this is not about isolated events, right? It's about systems and culture, and we have to be honest about that. Like, as a Black person myself, as a Black man in Newark, I know firsthand that anti-Blackness exists even in diverse communities like our own city, period. That includes amongst other communities of color, but the answer is not finger pointing exactly, but bringing a culture of accountability, healing, solidarity, and just really being able to answer to the flaws of what we have to operate under in our city, right? There are real tensions that have to be addressed directly and not ignored or swept under the rug. The district's delayed response and failure to be transparent, it did add fuel to the fire. I believe we have a responsibility to create schools where every student, whether they're Black, Latino, or otherwise, feels safe, they feel valued, they feel respected, and it feels like second nature, like home, right? But that starts with leadership, modeling accountability, right? And when you see what the leaked draft of the reversion was, if you pay close attention to it, that was just one of, I'm assuming, many drafts. I still believe that the final draft, the full disclosure of the final draft should be released. I believe that not just for us as board members, because I'm speaking to existence, April 15th comes, I will be one of the top 3 elected. Not just us as board members or the district staff having access to it, but it tells stories and narratives of not just the students, but also teachers and faculty who experience what they experience as well, right? There needs to be accountability on every single level, no matter who might be at the center of it. We can't be afraid to face the facts.
You're muted, Jonathan.
Oh, and Mrs. Anderson.
So, Kanileah Anderson, I'm A1 on the ballot. I am running for re-election, everyone. With regard to that, at the outset of the community learning about it, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything. I was one of those persons in the audience saying, I want to see this report. I want to know what's going on. What happened? What happened? What happened in the school? Whatever. Dave has a different perspective. He actually talked to one of the students affected. I've never had the opportunity to speak to them. I heard them speak at that November 2023 meeting. No, 2022. I was there at the school board meeting on November 2022. And so I was shocked and I was appalled. But you know what? as a covered Muslima, I'm 53 years old right now, and I went to a predominantly white private high school, so I experienced stuff like that. I mean, not as egregious, but I've experienced stuff like that as a kid, as an adult, and growing up for me, it was like handle it yourself. And so it didn't get to this level. Since all of this has happened, and we still have legal cases going on, and members that have ethics charges or what have you. I've been tuning in on our HIB reports, or the harassment, intimidation, and bullying reports. I said, let me see these reports. I don't sit on the committee, but I have the right to ask. And and I look at them and I read them to see, like, is it a problem? So, from what I know right now today, I can't say it's more of a problem than kids being just mean. Like, I always say kids are mean, and it's kids being mean, but I don't see any really overwhelming stuff coming, and it's come from home into the school, right? We know that, it's however you kids learn that stuff at home and they bring it to the school. But like David said, anything like that needs to be addressed head on, right? So with that case in particular, it wasn't, because if it was, we wouldn't still be talking about it today. Mike?
Is there something that you think could have been or should have been done that would have addressed it much faster? Uh, and is there stuff being done? Like, because you are a current member of the Board of Education, is there stuff going on now to try to rectify it?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about, in that school or other schools. So, I think that for the most part, you'd hear if there's something going on, right? If there's something festering and brewing. So the lack of not hearing anything is like, well, maybe there's nothing going on, but we don't know. I don't know if, you have administrators, sweeping stuff under the rug. I don't know if kids are afraid to speak out, and they shouldn't be, knowing that this has happened, and knowing, it's in the media. So, there shouldn't be any problem with that. I don't know. I don't know. I would hope not. I really would hope not.
And in full transparency, I'm a teacher in North Public Schools, and
Mhm.
one of the things that I hope goes on at other schools is like from mandatory workshops that you have to take
Yeah,
for teachers.
and the restorative
I think that
restorative
there's
justice. Mhm.
right, and I think that the HIB committees
Mhm.
that seem to be empowered, at least within our school, that
Right.
if there's an incident, that I've had a few incidents with kids, right, like
Yeah.
doing things that they shouldn't be doing, saying stuff that's absolutely inappropriate, and I
Mhm.
send them to our HIB specialist
Mhm.
so they can get counseling, right, so they
Right.
can be
Yeah.
counseled into
Yeah.
why saying those things is not appropriate. And
Right.
a kid was called a particular name, and I sent to the HIB specialist. They're very, very good in the school, and they actually deal with kids where the kids are at, and they resolve conflict, and they just do what they have to do to like
Mhm.
understand the history of where these things come from,
Yeah.
and counsel kids in what they do. I just hope that's something that is takes
It
place
is
across
going
the
on
district.
because, like I said, I saw the most recent report, and I'm like, oh wow, that person's busy, and I mean everywhere in all of these schools, and it's more in the elementary school than it is in the high school. So, yeah, that is going on outside of your school and everywhere.
And so to move on to the next question,
Mhm.
the population of the district is growing. There are a bunch of new schools. Michelle Obama opened up. There's a Lionsgate school opening up. There's the School of Architecture and Interior Design that is going to open up in September. There's a 10-year plan, and I believe we're in or about to start year 7 of that 10-year plan. Uh, where does it really need to improve? What focus does it need to be on? And what are the things that you're really proud of in terms of where North is going? Because I'm sure it's both, right? There's some things that you're like, hey, this needs to
Oh
improve,
yeah,
and other things are like, yeah,
yeah.
this is really what I'm
Mhm.
proud of.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So we're at the midway point in the strategic plan. And so because I was an active parent and I was a parent leader in the special education parents advisory committee. So, I was offered the opportunity to work on the strategic plan myself, on the special ed part, right? So a lot of my input had everything to do with transitioning, right? So children transition from pre-K into elementary, out of elementary into high school. And then for our special education students, we're transitioning from the 12th grade into our transition program because they are eligible for education services from 18 to 21, right? And that thing was severely lacking. It was severely lacking. And so, when my daughter was in the 8th grade back in 2018, I started talking about it at that time, expanding the program and doing so much better with that. And being on the board allowed me to go to a conference back in October to see how transition is happening in other states. And what I saw, I said, we can absolutely be doing this in Newark because we have all these resources, right? So I was very impressed by Florida. And Florida, they have the whole hotel and the resort industry. And so their school building itself is built for job training. They start the actual services at 14 years old. And so by 18 or 12th grade, these students can actually either graduate and transition into the workforce because the partners, they're automatically hiring those students, right? Or they can stay behind and get their additional support. And then when they stay from 18, and they actually stay till 22, when they stay those additional 4 years, it's just strictly job training, strictly preparing them for the world. Like here, we're only doing life skills for 3 years. My daughter mastered life skills in 9th grade, because I'm teaching her at home. We remote and they were doing life skills. So we're beyond the life skills room, right? She needs to have some work readiness. And she hasn't had that. My daughter is 20. She's only got one more year to go. And I can tell you, she has no marketable skills right now. So I know that needs to be improved. But we're working on it because I keep making the point of, why do we have a vocational school that the students in transition at both American History High and at Central, they could literally walk down the street to the school? Why are we not walking down the street? Because we incorporating all of these things like walking, getting to work on time. Why aren't we walking over there and learning to work in the print shop? Why are we not getting over there to get the culinary skills and leaving out of the program with a safe serve certificate, just like their non-disabled peers, right? Why are we not doing this? Because we have it. So we need to be using what we have and making sure they can do it, because a lot of the students, they may have autism or any other classification. That doesn't mean they can't work. That doesn't mean they're a liability and they can't do something. But I think that, for too many years, special education is where like, oh, they can, and we just gonna leave them alone and make sure they could do the bare minimum. No, my daughter can do way more than the bare minimum. Her peers can do way more than the bare minimum. So that's an area that they need to improve. But if you ask me what makes me proud, what am I most proud of? I'm proud of myself, to be honest with you all. I'm very proud of myself because I have been diligent in this last year plus. I've never missed a meeting. I am very prepared for our meetings. I am chairing a committee. I am at schools every week. I make it a point that I have 2 days out of my week that are board days, right? And I work full time and I'm an autism mom. So, my plate is full, but I ran so that I could serve the community, right? So, people want to run and be elected, but do you really want to serve, right? So I'm out here serving and doing this thing and trying to make all things better for everybody. And it's not just for the special education students, because, if they have something, that's new and improved for them, it's absolutely going to trickle down to their younger peers or even to the non-disabled community, because you have to have inclusion in all things as well. So, you know, if we're doing something extra with them, you can infuse other students in there that their parents might say, hey, I want my kid to do this do this thing too. So, you know, that's where I'm at with those two things.
Jonathan, you're for.
All right, David.
Go ahead. Thank you. I think first and foremost, there's a lot to be proud of, right? The Michelle Obama School, the School of Fashion and Design, the School of Architecture and Design, the new Lionsgate School that's about to happen and come out, right? These all just reflect a bold investment in Newark's future. These are schools that send a message that our kids deserve specialized, world-class opportunities, and they're right here in the city of Newark, right? That's powerful because Newark is the city of innovation. Newark is the city of new ideas. Newark is the city that leads the way in a lot of things and subjects across our state, specifically when it comes to our ideas around education, right? But while infrastructure is growing, we need to make sure that the foundation is solid. That means investing in literacy, investing in mental health, investing in teacher development and culturally responsive curriculum, right? We can have the shiny buildings, but we also need to make sure that we're not neglecting the basics that truly set students up for lifelong success. I'm proud of the vision that was laid out as far as our 10-year strategic plan goes, but we have to make sure we're finishing strong. These next few years need to focus on equity, it has to focus on outcomes, and has to make sure that making sure every neighborhood and child is included in the progress, right? And like my colleague candidate, my team member said, right, when it comes to our special needs students, when it comes to our non-disabled students, right, making sure all students, whether you are an English second language learner, whether you're special needs, whether you need to be in an alternative pathway program, right? Yeah. That they are all included in the process in our next 10 years. And let's just also be honest, in our last 10 years, we also did go through the COVID pandemic. So I know a lot of the things that might have supposed to have been going down the line in the 10-year strategic plan strategy may have fell off the gap, right? But I think it's our job to make sure we get back on track and keep pushing forward and moving our schools forward.
And we know that this is electoral season. And an important one, we know that depending on who's in the state house, who's in the governorship, Newark has a shortage in budget, or it'll have enough money so that you're not cutting programs. We've all been in the school system long enough to know that there are times where it's drought and you're having to cut all these programs, and there's times where you have enough money to do the things that you need to do. In this governor's race already, the leading Republican candidate said that Newark is wasting a lot of money, and that Newark's wasting a lot of money, has $1 billion budget, it's wasting money, and third graders can't read. That often, right, when they're talking about test scores, and they'll look at various benchmarks or test scores, and they will characterize the district in that way. Do you agree with that characterization, or do you agree with that statement of the leading Republican candidate? What is your take on it?
I don't agree with that. Because of the $1 billion, and I heard you mention it with the last guest, 416 million goes to charters, right? And it goes to them unchecked. We don't know what their outcomes are, right? We don't see their data. So where everybody can see ours and report on it and bash us for it, how are we to know that they're not doing, the same, better or worse, right? I don't agree that we're wasting money, because the first thing we did was capital improvements, right? So we can't be educated in a supportive environment if we don't even have the tools that we need, right? We did some of our athletic fields over. We did a few of our auditoriums over and gymnasiums over. We're making spaces for the children to use, right? So you don't want to go to school and you don't have a gym. You don't want to go to school and you can't sit in a program in the auditorium. So we did those things. The teacher salaries have gone up because Who doesn't need more teachers? However, we need to retain them. And of course, there has to be some incentive. You know, we have districts across this state who are closing down schools, laying off their staff. Fortunately for us, we don't have to do that, right? And then this new contract, their salaries will continue to increase over the life of the contract, and hopefully it'll keep people here. We have invested a lot of money in professional development, right? And so, money wasted? I don't think so. Because if you want to have excellent staff, you got to pay them and you also have to train them. One thing that happened last month, we had it was the third annual special education conference. And we had about 16 of our own staff hosting the workshops because, you know, they are people who are developed, and even in their spare time they may give presentations out in the community, but they said let's build our own group of presenters, and they did that, and they presented to their peers, you know, and we had this whole full day staff development workshop. We invited in some special education parents because of the 30 some odd workshops, there was some very valuable information there. And, you know, we're not holding, you know, we're not gatekeepers and not keeping stuff to ourselves, right? We're trying to do better in that regard. Our graduation rates are increasing, right? The class of 2024 alone had over $165 million in scholarships, right? We had hundreds of students that graduated with a 3.5 or better. We had 178 students who graduated with their associate's degree before they even had their high school diploma. So did we waste some money? No. When we paid Essex County, when we're paying Montclair University, we're not wasting money because we're investing in these students, right? We're trying to create a pipeline to get us some new teachers back in here, right? We got a couple of more years before we can get the students from the Red Hawks Rising program at Montclair to come back and teach, but that's what we spend our money on. So did we waste our money? Absolutely not. We didn't waste any money. Those are things that you have to do. You make an investment, like you buy a house, you put stuff in it. Your house is not perfect when you get it, but when you finish spending your money, you might. So yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
And David?
Got you. So, of course, I agree 100% with Ms. Anderson. I don't agree with that critique at all. I won't even say his name. But it's not because we don't have serious challenges to face in Newark, right? It's because it's easy to talk about waste without understanding the realities on the ground. Newark has been underfunded and under-resourced for decades, right? We were under state control for 2 decades plus, and even under state control while the state was in here supposedly giving our students a better education. They were shutting down our schools. They were gutting out programs. They were cutting down our funding, right? And so we've been under local control for less than 10 years since, and we're still playing catch up. And when it comes to those resources, right, that said, if any third grader can't read, that should concern all of us, no matter who or what side ideology politically that you stand on. But the solution isn't to gut the budget or scapegoat our schools. It's to double down on what works, and we know what works, right? Early literacy programs, family engagement, and making community schools and getting our families and our parents engaged in their child's education, right? Well-trained educators, and like Ms. Anderson had already stated, making sure that they're not just well-trained and they're not well-qualified and prepared, but also well-paid, right? And wraparound services completely when it comes to mental health, when it comes to academics and making sure we're keeping up with technology and being advanced, when it comes to services as far as having our social workers and our psychologists and our guidance counselors in the school. We need to be less political about education, and it needs to have less political sound bites because it sounds good for your quick 2-minute minute of fame, right? But we have to be more honest about the investment we are doing in the district for our kids. Accountability is important, but context is important too. And Newark's story is one of both struggle, but also serious progress.
And I know that we're running out of time for this segment. I did want to squeeze in one of the last questions. When we're dealing with Vote 16, um, Vote 16 is seen as being important because if you have over $1 billion budget, then we want massive participation. Democracy in education is really important. But as you alluded to before, over $400 million goes to charter schools that have zero local accountability, like zero local elected accountability. Is it hypocritical to support Vote 16 and not demand that charter schools be accountable to the locally elected school board?
So this is an important and really valid question, right? When I was in high school, I was part of the Newark Students Union. Went to arts high school from 7th grade to 12th grade. And then in Newark Students Union, we not only fought, and our purpose in creating the organization was for the fight for local control back at its premise. But further than that, it was really just expanding and solidifying youth power and youth voice. One of the things we did when I was in high school was we did a high school tour across the city on a Student's Bill of Rights. Two of those components, one of which was for young people to be able to have the right to vote at 16 and 17 in the local school board elections. The second component was having more engagement and involvement and direct decision-making power in the policies and day-to-day operations across the district, right? So when it comes to Vote 16, I actually don't think that is counterproductive at all or controversial or adversary to the concept of what goes on in our charter schools across the city and district. Like the mayor's office said when they encountered those young teens, number one, I'm proud of them for even protesting, using their First Amendment right and standing up to say, this is wrong and we want justice and we want it now. But as the mayor said, the mayor and this local school board do not have that jurisdictional authority to force charter schools to be, I guess what folks are asking for, more transparent and more accountable to the people. That lies within the state legislature. And I think it's our due diligence, not just as people of running for office as candidates, not just as elected officials and board members, but as people of the community to actually take our power as civically engaged individuals, our political capital, and press on our elected officials to say, this is what we want. We need more accountability and transparency, and you have to do by the books and policy, right? It's true right now that charters don't answer to the locally elected Board of Education. And that creates a real disconnect for families and students who want more input. But I support for us to create mechanisms to have more transparency, more accountability and whatnot. But that doesn't just stop at charter schools. We also have our Essex County schools of technology and vocational schools who don't answer to a locally elected school board, right? There are many different entities in government and levers that don't answer to a democratic, direct, not just democratic, but direct democratic process, which is hearing straight from the people in their will. So 100% to answer your question, do I believe that us pushing and championing Vote 16 while also there's this lack of transparency or accountability when it comes to charter schools is counterintuitive to each other? The answer is no. I actually think, if anything, that in fact, I think it's consistent, right? Vote 16 is just one step towards building a stronger, more democratic city where all young people have a say, but we have to keep going, right? And that includes pushing for democratic reforms within the education system, regardless of what model, what district, or what type of school it is.
Mrs. Anderson?
I mean, for the students being able to vote, I think that when I was that age, I wanted to vote. I wanted to vote. I wanted to be involved because I knew that, having the ability to vote meant I had a say in something, right? And so, like David said, regardless of where you're going to school at, you want to have a say in the process. And I appreciate this happening now because what I learned at the Vote 16 kickoff was that, if you start voting early, then the chances are that you'll be a lifelong voter. Like myself, I've been voting since I was 18, right? And I literally only missed one election since I was 18 years old, right? So if we get them started now, and then the ones that are going to be eligible to vote on June 10th, because it's so very important, then they're going to vote on June 10th, and they're going to vote in November. And then, and then we just keep going and growing voices.
But the question wasn't just about Vote 16, but that when they vote at 16, they will have zero say over a charter school budget.
True.
That is 1/3.
True, right.
That's 1/3 of the budget, right? Like if being
I mean,
democratically accountable for money.
That's wild because, and I don't, I'm gonna say when all of that charter versus public was going on, I don't know where I was at the time. I might have been a newlywed and a new mom and stuff. But yeah, that bothers me. It's a student did walk up to me after one of the student forums and asked me a question. She said, "Could you come to my school?" And I said, "Well, which school do you go to?" I said, "Oh yeah, no, I can't go to your school." And then I explained to her, I said, "You go to a publicly funded private school. And so, unfortunately, this board doesn't have any oversight over your school. And unfortunately, I can't help you." And I mean, the frown she made broke my heart. But I mean, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't agree with it is to me. I think it is contradictory because it's like, but you can't say, well, only the kids that go to NPS can vote and not the other kids because that could change overnight. We see kids, come back from charter and vice versa, perhaps, but and then like David said, you have your students in the county schools. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the thought was behind it, like, overall, besides the wanting kids to get into the electoral process early on.
All right, well, thank you so much. We have that last question for you because I believe we are a little bit over time on this. And the
Mhm.
last question that we always ask of candidates, and you could also feel free during answering this last question to plug your line, right? Like your not line, but your individual number and letter in terms of where to vote, and also anything biographically about yourself that you think would be important as well. So. Uh, Last question. Who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Okay, Kanileah Anderson, A1 on the ballot. You can't forget that A, first letter in the alphabet, first number on the ballot. That's me. I'm running for re-election. And I will probably most likely be bumping Eric B for president from now until April 15th because I love that group and I'm old school. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, and David.
Got you. So, of course, my name is David Daughetyon. I'll be A3 on the ballot, moving Newark Schools Forward. For me, my favorite rap and hip hop artist is actually J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. There's not a single album that either of them have produced. And I can't necessarily pick a favorite between the two of them, but there's not a single album that either of them have produced that there's a single song I won't skip. Like that I would skip, I'll say. And more recently, I think somebody who's really eating on the charts and really coming up is Doechii, actually. She's really coming up and doing her thing. So I think in a rap game, though, my overall pick is between J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, both candidates, for coming out,
Thank you for
and
having us.
thank you for arranging this for when you did. So very much appreciate it. Good
No
luck,
problem.
and we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have finished that segment of All Politics Are Local, and we are honored to start a new segment. We are taking a break from our election coverage and the Newark Board of Education, and I'm honored to invite a very good friend, Byron Arthur, a very esteemed educator from the wonderful city of New Orleans. He is also the chair of the board of directors for the National Speech and Debate Association. So he is a Hall of Fame debate coach, one of the storied debate coaches in the United States. He is an amazing educator who I have to work with at multiple times, and he is the chair of the National Speech and Debate Association, one of the largest associations in the United States. I have just it's just such an honor to have like what I think like my personal heroes on the show, and this is just an interview about education, the importance of it, and I thought it would be perfect for this show in particular, which talks about people running for elected office and the board the power of speech and debate and communication is just immense. So welcome, Byron Arthur.
Well,
So
well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So let's start first with the chair of the board of directors, the chair of the board of directors for the National Speech and Debate Association. What is the National Speech and Debate Association, and why is it so significant that you are the chair of the board of directors of that organization?
Well, it is first of all, it is a $7 million nonprofit that has about 140,000 student members in 6,000 schools across the United States, and even beyond the shores of this country. And really, if I had to really capture it, it's an organization that has now been very committed to access. How do we get speech and debate in every school in the United States? How do we encourage states to make speech and debate a graduation requirement? Because what we know is that that particular activity is transformative in the lives of young people, and especially important in the lives of Black and Brown young people in this country.
So you're saying that participating in speech and debate is particularly important. Has that been your experience as an educator for over 30 years?
It was my experience in terms of my own high school experience. It has been critical in the lives of my students. I've had the fortune of teaching in private schools, in a charter school, which I had the opportunity to start, which debate was at the center of, and I watched lives being changed. Young men, because it was an all-boy charter school, that would never have looked at this particular activity. Some who had never traveled outside of the city of New Orleans, not exposed to competing against young people from private schools from around the country. And we were able to do that for them. And there were differences that were in the classroom. There were differences for them socially. It's life-changing.
So can you give me, like, you talked about the schools that you're associated with. I believe the charter school you were associated with had the third highest test scores in the city at some point.
Yes, at some point it was the third highest ACT composite of the high schools in the city, and the highest of the open enrollment charter schools in the city.
Was that partially, do you see the connection between your emphasis on speech and debate and the ability to really perform with the elite schools of the city?
100%. And I think there are two things that happen. One, so much of test taking is about confidence, and speech and debate provides confidence like very few other extracurricular activities that a young person can engage in. And so I think that was the first thing. The second piece was the reasoning ability and critical thinking that you get from debate. And given that standardized testing has moved us in that direction with an emphasis on critical thinking, I just don't understand why more schools and more school districts are not placing an emphasis on speech and debate.
And can you say why that is?
Or can I say, oh, hey, Ed, how you doing, man? And are you asking me why they're not placing an emphasis on it?
Well, no. Well, you can say that too, but I'm wondering why speech and debate, right? You said it adds more confidence, right, and helps these kids, when they're taking these state exams. Why do you think that is?
Because I think, first of all, the research that one has to do, and think about it. I have an argument that I need to make, either in support of my own argument or in opposition to someone else's argument. So I have to go and do research. I have to take that research and fit it to the argument that I'm making, and then figure out how to express that. But I have to analyze what I'm reading in the first place in order to understand the meaning. And that's huge. And I think that takes you beyond where I think a lot of students are just comfortable, right? Give me the right answer. Well, in debate, speech, there is no right answer. And I think so much of learning how to analyze and come up with your ideas and look at the ideas of others and figure out why those ideas might be right, or why they may have room for improvement, is a critical skill that the activity gives you. I also think that, and I had a young man come back and talk about this. He's now in a position where he's gotten his master's degree. He's working in a hospital as a speech therapist, but he ends up, sometimes in treatment rooms where he is advocating for a particular treatment plan or pathway with people that are older than he is. And he says the reason he can do that, the reason he has that confidence, is because of his time that he spent in speech and debate.
Yeah, that's huge. I think you're absolutely right. And then I would add, then if that is the case, particularly for our kids, because as you know, confidence is a big piece, right?
Yes.
For us as we mature, and I'm talking about African Americans and particularly males. Why do you think there's such apprehension then for schools to implement speech and debate? Because as you know, I have issues with some of the young people I talk to, even asking them to speak up.
Yes.
And I know that one of the issues I had when I went to college is that I had issues with, one, studying, and then two, doing research. But could you imagine if these kids had that skill coming from high school? And I think that's why so many of Jonathan's students are successful, because he gives them that when they leave science, and by the time they get to college, most of those kids, if not all of those kids, are successful and they graduate college because they have that skill. And that's one of the skills you need.
Well,
so why do you think, in our community, why do you think that's such a pushback, and we don't have that as one of the major classes that these kids should be taking, even if they don't debate?
So first of all, I will say, if we could produce more Jonathan Alstons, our communities would be a lot better. And when you think about his story, he was involved in speech and debate. He had the opportunity to go to a very fine selective university in the United States. And instead of going off and making tons of money, he came back to the community in which he grew up and decided he wanted to teach. And he decided he wanted to teach young people who needed it. And he wanted to give them those particular skills. And he demanded the very, very best from them, as he continues to do today. That's the answer. That's the formula. We need more Jonathan Alstons. Now, what stops us from having?
I'm supposed to be interviewing you, and
well, but listen, Jonathan, I have always admired the work that you do, and even as I was teaching in my comfortable, predominantly white private school, I longed for the opportunity to do the work that you're doing. And so I don't always have the words for it, but it's phenomenal. And I think that sometimes schools don't understand it. Our community, unfortunately, doesn't understand it. We see our students, particularly our boys, in athletics, and we don't see them in this. And that's a real problem. And that's one of the things that even I was fighting in my own school, is that our young men were afraid of this at first. They didn't want to step into that, out of their comfort zone and do this. And a lot of parents weren't pushing that to happen. They all wanted to know when we were going to get basketball started or football started. And that was unfortunate.
I asked Jonathan to let me weigh in on this conversation as a former speech coach in the Newark Public Schools. And to what you all are saying, speech and debate has a very significant place in our high schools and in elementary schools. But the push is about teaching to a test and not teaching students to think critically. Everything that the gentleman just said about the research and learning how to be in an argument and either supporting what you say or opposing what someone else says. That it looks like extemporaneous speaking on the speech side. We had when Newark, and I don't know how it is now, I think there are still Newark champions, but at one point, Newark had speech and debate teams in just about every single high school. And when we would go to the suburbs, the Black students, the Latino students of the Newark Public School District, the suburban kids would say, "Here comes the competition." And repeatedly, over and over and over again, we would reign as champions. And the students that were on the speech side were just as devoted and committed. It was like part 2 of the school day. Some students came to school because they knew that in order to practice for their speaking parts or their speech, their debate, that they had to be in school. School is not just about, I heard those candidates talk about the test scores and the numbers and all, but school is not just that. It is a place for you to grow in all capacities, and speech and debate absolutely should be in every school in Newark, because with Jonathan being still at the helm, Newark reigns, and there were students that went to Rutgers, and the Rutgers debate team became extremely strong. But it takes a level of commitment from the adults, as well as an opening, if you will, for students. The narrative is, as Mr. Arthur said, that the athletes reign. We have to change the narrative to make it cool, to be smart, articulate, and sober. How about that?
Yes.
How about that?
And just as an introduction, Deborah Smith-Gregory is head of our local of the Newark NAACP. She's also a former speech and debate coach. She actually used to judge me when I was in high school. And she was also, she's known me since I was about 14 years old in high school. So when it comes to generations of people giving back, we have like really everyone on the screen has just been giving back, right? Like I received a lot from Deborah Smith-Gregory when I was a young man. I received a lot from Byron Arthur when I was a young coach. So this whole thing about giving back is just incredible. And
with Arthur, I'm sorry, with Ed, what he said that I can relate to. The pandemic and post-pandemic made young people isolated, insulated, and speaking hush tone, hush, right? Where you keep saying, "Excuse me, what did you say? What did you say?" You can't be in speech and debate and speak in hushed tones.
Nope.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't
Yeah.
do that. It doesn't work.
I had a young man, Miss Gregory, yesterday. I was talking to him, and I was saying, I can't hear you. I mean, he's very smart, very bright, and 'cause when he's talking to me, I'm saying, you an extremely smart young man. You're a 10th grader. You're very bright. I said, but I can't hear you.
Right.
I said, I need to hear
Something
you.
happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out that Myrna Morales is one of the first students who I ever coached in high school debate. And Byron Arthur was her instructor at a debate institute back was her instructor at a debate institute. And I remember when I first met Byron Arthur, the first thing he said is, "Oh, you're the coach at Science Park High School or Science High School, or North Science," and says, "Do you know Myrna Morales?" And of course I was like, "Of course I know Myrna, right?" Like, and we bonded over that. And I think that that's the beauty of the national speech and debate community. You have a coach from an incredible coach from New Orleans working with uh, one of our students from Newark before, and I believe he worked with her before I met her, right? Because I met her in her senior year of debate. So when she was a senior, I was a first year teacher. She had Mr. Arthur as an instructor before she even met me. And so I think that's the power and beauty of speech and debate and the work that everyone on the screen has been doing. Mr. Arthur,
Hey,
I have a
Jonathan, let me say one thing. You're my brother and I love you, but Myrna Morales will always be Newark debate to me. I'm sorry, and you've had
that's
a lot of
excellent.
great young people, but when I met her at American University, I was so taken because she was so smart and she was so passionate, and I challenged her, and no matter how much I challenged her, she wanted more and she gave me more, and I think that's what I see in the young people that come through Science Park High School, and I have a deep and profound respect for it, but it started with Myrna.
Absolutely. No, I have to agree with that because Myrna Morale, amazing. Love you, Myrna. Love you, Myrna. Like in terms of and everything you've done and everything that you will continue to do. Right. Like that when we have kids like that, the world's going to be a better place.
Yep.
And I know that you have a lot of those experiences too. In your years, what are some of the stories that stand out from the kids that you've coached and that led you to where you are now?
Wow. That's hard. That's hard to do. I can tell you the most, I'm sorry, I need to, the most important thing for me about this, and this may not be the question you asked me, but this is the only way I can frame this. Being able to create a culture and an environment of where there's love and there's discipline and there's challenge is incredibly important. And the examples or the things that stand out to me about some of the young people I've coached has been how they have responded to that, how they have how they've changed. Um, you know, a young man named Daniel Williams stands out to me, and I remember, and for a guy who loves debate, for me to be thrust into the world of interp with him was phenomenally special, and we tussled and we fought, and he asked me what I thought it would take for him to be on the national stage, and I told him three things, and he didn't like any of them. And then he came back the next year and his senior year and thought he might be ready to quit. And I said, well, that's an unfortunate decision, but we're prepared to move on without you. Well, he didn't quit, and we went through a year where we grew a lot closer, and we reached our goal at the end of the year. He was a national champion. And there's a young man who didn't particularly love the school that where he was attending. He hadn't really found that thing, but he found this particular activity. And that's probably one of my very favorite stories of what has happened.
Mr. Arthur, we are going to have to get you to come back again as well. There are a lot of stories, right? Like we have barely scratched the surface. I wanted to talk. I plan on talking about your early days as a coach, what some of that was like as well. But I think it was fitting that we talked about education and the power of speech and debate,
Sure.
given that what your current position is, and also given what tonight's program is about. Tonight's program has been about kids starting to vote at the age of 16 in our school board elections, and we are interviewing the overwhelming majority of the people who are running for the elected school board for the Newark Public Schools, for the Newark Board of Education. And I think that your perspective in this conversation is just invaluable. I also love that Myrna Morales just jumped in, happened to see you, and jumped on, because I think that is also a powerful thing when we are connected. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, speech and debate coach. You, New Orleans. Yeah, we both experienced the same student, right? And
Yes.
we both and it's both in giving in terms of like education, but also receiving in terms of the power of the kids that we work with. The kids we work with are absolutely amazing, and I always say that I learn as much as I teach from my students, and I think that is the full spirit. Now, we have a final question for you, Mr. Arthur, and that is, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual,
Come
or
on,
group?
man. For all the years
The
you've
hip
known
hop
me,
show.
you know the answer to that question. I have always been an Ice Cube fan.
Wow.
That is true.
Wow.
That is true. That is true.
We gotta have
And
we gotta have you back so we can talk about that. You know?
I know he's gotten to be a little controversial, and some people aren't as excited about him as they used to be, but I still very much enjoy what he has to say on his records. Now, some of his
exactly. I'll
other
never
stuff.
have dinner with the president. I'll never have dinner with the president.
Hey, Jonathan, we gotta have him back. And so we can talk about that.
Absolutely.
And Jonathan, we gotta get your brother-in-law back too. So we'll invite Mr. Arthur and your brother-in-law back so we all can have some real.
True. My brother-in-law, who's from New Orleans, because as he knows, New Orleans is now my second favorite city, right? Like you've got Newark and now New Orleans, because my wife is from New Orleans, so we definitely have to have you back.
But we know why New Orleans is your second favorite city.
Well, the food as well, but my wife.
There you
first.
go.
My wife first, because my wife can cook, right? Like I didn't know so many people had it down like that, man. Every meal she has ever made me has been something I would buy in a restaurant, and I'm like, yo, like, what's this? Like, you got that voodoo stuff going on. You putting the food down there, like, just amazing.
And can sing to you while she's serving it up to you too. That's the other thing.
Fair enough. My wife has an amazing voice. So thank you. Oh, and for all of this, we have the best man, one of the best men at my wedding on the screen, Ed Riley,
Yep.
And we have the officiant of my wedding on this as well, Byron Arthur, the good Reverend Byron Arthur, was the officiant of the wedding, and that is, just to put it mildly, my man preached a sermon that was just incredible, man. He had people like crying up, and it was just amazing.
Well, listen, I had I had Jesus and the two of you to work with, so you know it was all it was all good. And then when the bride started singing, it was all over.
That's
Oh
right.
my goodness! Oh my
That's right.
goodness! Oh my goodness! That's true. Wife saying the Lord's Prayer was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. So thank you, and we will have you on again. We'll have to make that happen. So thank you
I'll be
very much,
back.
Mr. Byron Arthur,
Love you, my brother.
and for love you too, man. Love you too.
Take care. Ed, love you,
All
man.
right.
Love you too, my brother. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a wonderful segment and a great segue into what we're talking about in terms of education. The night is education tonight. It is Vote 16 night. It is the time where like kids who are 16 years old can vote in the school board elections, and we have eight. We have 8 of the 11 candidates on. Again, if you are not gotten on tonight, if you are one of the candidates who's not on, please just contact me, inbox me, hit me up through Facebook because I reached out but wasn't able to make contact. So there's still going to be space for, if not tonight, then next week we will try to put together some time to have with you again. And all politics are local. We believe in civil civic discourse, and it's important that when we deal with elected political leaders, uh, that we have a great voice. Oh, thanks, Baba Zaid. We have on our next candidate for the Newark School Board. We have Yolonda Johnson. Yolonda Johnson, welcome to the Newark. Welcome to All Politics Are Local. You are running for school board. You are A9 on the ballot. We can start off with the jumping into the controversy, like we have jumped into the controversy earlier with the other candidates. Uh, we have talked about what happened at the School of Global Studies. We talked about that with all of our candidates because that was a hot controversial issue, and it was about where there were accusations of anti-blackness, and the Creed report done by very respected educator Lauren Wells said that there was a culture of anti-blackness within the school, and people feared retaliation. Is there what do you what do you think the district could have or should have done differently? And do you think that it is part of a larger issue? Is there a conflict that you see between Latinos and Blacks within the city of Newark? And how could or would that be dealt with? If you were an elected member of the Board of Education, how would you approach this issue of race division? Or do you think that it was just something that happened within that one school?
Okay, so from my experience and knowledge with working with the school board and having boots on the ground, this is not the first issue. It's one of many issues that when we're talking about Latinos and Hispanics, because let's go back to when Kenneth Gibson was running to become the mayor, which brought the Blacks and the Latinos together. The reason why we have a diverse city council now, because we weren't even allowed in city hall per my grandmother during her time. And so when we talking about the school and the Creed report, the School of Global Studies, and that issue, we have to first start with what happens down here in the East Ward. It is very prevalent, the Portuguese against Blacks and how they treat the Black Americans down here in the East Ward, where I live. It happens over there in the North Ward. I get so many phone calls about the racism that happens at McKinley Elementary School. So this is not something that the district is unaware of. They know that this is happening. What we can do about it is, and why they didn't release the report, for me, they don't have to release the report, because not releasing the report just tells me that it's egregious, and it may cause a 1967 rebellion all over again, because it's just that bad. But it happened at Science Park, and it's happening inside the schools. When we have Latino leadership, we have principal autonomy and all kinds of things, and bullying is happening inside the school. So what I think should happen is I think what needs to happen is Superintendent Leon need to address diversity, but he also needs to address implicit bias as far as the school leaders are concerned, because the students aren't only being bullied, but the educators as well. And that's another reason why, one of the main reasons why we can't retain the teachers that we recruit in this district. We have and I'll go into that a little later, because one of your questions will segue into that. But yeah, he needs to address the implicit bias. But it's happening, and it's spilled over into the classrooms.
Do you think that I know that they put in place a series of the harassment, intimidation, and bullying specialists within the schools. Do you think that that is something that is effective, working, could work, or do you think it's just not being even implemented within the schools?
I know that they redid it, but I don't think that is working. Why? Because first of all, we have this issue right now with we're dealing with the harassment, intimidation, and bullying that was already happening across the district, even with the principals having principal autonomy. Because, like, who wants to go before a Donaldson hearing because their principal are friends with, or there's somebody who may have an issue with them, and then you have jealousy and enviousness and all kinds of stuff happening in the school buildings, and our children are sitting back and they're observing that, they're seeing that. And what do you think is going to happen between them? Well, if the adults are doing it, harassing, intimidating, and bullying, then what do you think the students are going to do? They're going to do the same thing. So I think that, and again, Roger needs to, Superintendent Leon needs to get with the principals and remove the principal autonomy. And there needs to be more oversight regarding the school leaders and how they're handling the staff that's inside their school buildings.
Okay. We're looking at, when we look at the population of the district is actually growing, right? And the district is opening up schools like Michelle Obama, the Fashion School of Design. Lionsgate's going to be opening up a school soon. And we are we're a little over halfway through the district's 10-year plan. What are some of the things that you think need to improve? And what are the things that you're particularly proud of?
So what I'm proud of is that during Kanileah Anderson's tenure, I had the opportunity to invite elected officials, Kanileah Anderson herself, and Superintendent Leon. When I presented at George Washington Carver as the PTSA president, this idea that I had learned about when I traveled to Chicago, sustainable community schools. And sustainable community schools is just using the schools as hubs for resources. And so that's how we got the idea, the South Ward Community School Initiative under Christopher Surf's tenure when he was a superintendent. And so when Roger came along as our superintendent, he loved the idea. And so the strategic plan was built out of and influenced by the sustainable community school model, from cradle to career, college and career readiness. And so I love that about it. He doesn't want to call it a sustainable community school, but what needs to happen is that it is not fully the idea, or he did not implement the model. He got us to those naming those different schools, but he didn't implement the core pillars to the sustainable community schools. And one of them, well, the top three for me in the sustainable community school model is, if we're going to do the strategic plan and thinking about that from cradle to career, college and career readiness, my favorite one is a culturally relevant and responsive curriculum. And then the other one is high quality teaching versus high stakes testing. And then my most favorite one is bringing in those wraparound supports, such as trauma informed care, mental health care, ear care, eye care. All of those, when I was in school, I had all of that under one umbrella. And so what I feel like should happen is Roger needs to have another sit down and allow me to really help him in it the way that it should be implemented, because we're not reinventing the wheel. It has always been in place. We just suffered major cuts. Again, one of the other candidates talked about the cuts that we had across the district, and we can implement that again. We can include, I believe, Jewish Renaissance used to be in certain facilities. Well, we need Jewish Renaissance or any doctor's office based inside the schools, so that our kids cannot miss out on instruction time, and our parents, if they are at work, they won't miss out on work.
So it's kind of like when you were talking about it before, you mentioned certain models for community schools. Is that something similar to both what Raz Baraka worked on at Central with Lauren Wells when they were creating a series of the Global Village, or even maybe like when you were talking about when you were a
Not
kid,
the
maybe you were saying?
So the broader, bolder approach is what Dr. Wells was working on. That is more in sync with a charter style model. What we're saying is we've already had it. Like when I was going to school, my grandmother raised me. So she depended on the crossing guard, having that relationship with the crossing guard to cross me across the street because she was old in age. And the security guard walking me from the corner up to Camden Street School because I lived in the building behind the movie theater. And then she depended on the teachers, the educators. She depended on everybody in the school pulling their weight. And it's just really everybody taking part in the development of a child. That's all it is. And just pulling in those resources. I remember being pulled out the class to go down to the nurse's office to get my eyes checked, to go get my ears checked. This is what I'm saying. This is what we need to reinstitute. The only thing that I would add is the mental health care, because right, we're dealing with children in a different light right now, a different era, who's faced with different challenges than I was faced with when I was coming up and you're coming up. Different challenges that weigh on their mental health. There is vicarious trauma and trauma that the students are experiencing at home, and when they come to school, the teachers are even experiencing the vicarious trauma because it spills over into the classroom. And so those supports need to be in place for the students. So it's totally different from what Dr. Wells, the broader, bolder approach.
Okay, and the reason why I mentioned the Global Village is because they did also talk about wraparound services, having job training, healthcare,
Mhm.
et cetera, all within the same ecosystem, by creating an ecosystem for students that seems to be similar to what you're
Yeah.
talking about as well. Or even when you're talking about when we were kids, when you're talking about like in the 70s, there were there were literally after school programs that lasted until late in the evening very similar to what they
Yes.
have at West Side, but
Hmm.
that was in all the comprehensive schools, and those were cut based on budget cuts. So that's why I brought that up in terms of the Global Village, which seemed to be a
Yeah.
recreation, contemporary recreation that added wraparound services, services for parents and families. And I know when Raz Baraka was principal of Central High School, and he implemented all of that, the test scores rose incredibly fast, so fast that Chris Cerf accused him of cheating,
Right.
which was
Right.
inaccurate. Chris Cerf had to, the state superintendent of schools had to apologize to the principal of Central High School for accusing him of cheating when he just created services for kids that increased the scores. Um, now the next, I'm
Yeah.
just going to
It
push
does
on to
work.
the absolutely, and I'm going to push on to the next question about Well, actually, the next question about vote 16. Um, we 16-year-olds are going to be able to vote for the first time in the upcoming election that you're going to be a part of. However, there are charter schools have zero democratic accountability. If we're saying that it is important that education be democratically run, and charter schools, which receive $400 million from the Newark Public Schools, close to one-third of our budget, shouldn't charter schools also be democratically accountable to our locally elected board?
Yes, charter schools should be held accountable. And if anybody is watching, know me, I have championed a moratorium on charter school expansion. Charter schools have no oversight. I feel like charter schools should be held to the same accountability standards as traditional public schools. And it is so sad, and I mentioned it at one of the forums to the students, that it is so unfortunate that majority of the students that were in attendance at the movie theater um, were charter students. However, the traditional public school board that they will be voting for don't have or make decisions or don't have a say so in what happens at their school. So what I think should have happened, and it still can happen, and I want to make it happen, like right now, is educate them on their process, because they do have board meetings. However, their board meetings are not as structured as traditional public schools. They're not as open as our traditional public schools. We have two meetings: the business meeting once a month, and then the general meeting where we sign up and we speak about what concerns us the district. I feel like that happened with charter schools. And if any charter school
Oh, you
parent, family member, or student listening can reach out to the trustees, because you have a board of trustees that really make the decisions, and we can sit down and we can have that and try to negotiate with you to come up with some kind of game plan on how we can open that up for you guys as well.
Okay, now I know we're running out of time, and after the election, would definitely want to have you back, regardless of what happens, because I think that so many times we have so many different people. Like we've been
Yeah.
doing the election broadcasts for years, and there's so many interesting people who run for elected office within the city who do a lot of things that people just don't know about or appreciate. And I think that even just making an effort to have people back on to talk what they're doing is always, I think, important. Um, in
Right.
what is there in the last question we're gonna ask right before we ask like after you finish, like who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? We're gonna ask you about um, what is there about your biography, in your biography, that makes you good for this position. And in an elected school board, you have to read document after document. There's tons of information you have to process in a very short amount of time. What is there about your biography that makes you specifically qualified for this position of in Newark Board of Education?
So what makes me qualified for this position is I'm already operating as an unofficial board member. I have for 20 plus years been doing the work of a board member. This is my 4th time running, and I'm absolutely happy to be running for the 4th time because it just demonstrates the push and to never give up. And I won't ever give up on the city of Newark. I won't give up on our families, no matter whether they're charter, private, a traditional public school. I just won't give up. And me doing the work of a school board member is what qualifies me. I just don't have the title. I haven't been sworn in, but I am already operating in full capacity as a board member. It has just not been official yet. Oh, and my favorite
Who's your
rapper,
favorite hip hop artist,
I can't
individual or
hear
group?
you.
Yeah. Yep. And who's your favorite hip hop artist,
It
individual or
is
group?
okay, so I have 2, but my favorite one is Tupac, and then Kendrick Lamar.
Well, thank you. I know Baba Z wanted to ask you a question about the incident with police, but I know that we have run out of time, and I know we have to have our other person on. But that's one of the things that we want to do when we have you back, unless you want to very, very briefly recap.
So what happened with the United States Marshal, I'm going to say that was just a photo op. It was a photo op. And when I come back, I will go into details on why I'm saying that. I have several reasons. I experienced it firsthand. There is a lot of talk about X, Y, and Z, but the truth is, it's only a photo. It was only a photo op, because I'm gonna leave you with this. The picture, if you pay attention to the picture, he has on an Amazon shirt, right? You cannot work for Amazon if you have those kinds of charges. That's one. And then 2, I went to Amazon's page. I don't see them push out a message to the public saying this person is in no way connected to this organization, because they're trying to say, oh, he just put that on. No, because Amazon will have any company or corporation when it's all over media, it's all over the news. There is no way that Amazon did not post and separating themselves from that crime. They didn't. Either they were paid to be quiet so that they can do this photo op while I was live in the mix of the police raiding my house that day. They already issued the article. Why? How did they do it so fast? You understand? I never seen them bring the boy out. So that's what I'll leave you with. I think Amazon
You're talking
was
about
paid.
the
They didn't put an art. Yeah.
talking about the federal. Are you talking about the federal raid that happened in Newark, that of the person that they
Yes.
accused of being
Yes.
a gang member? That they raided your
Yes.
house. We are definitely going to have to get you back, because that's a much, much, much more
It was.
expensive
It
interview.
was my house. They came to. So while she's
And
taunting about that, thankfully I don't have small children, but I had to go to counseling today because I'm thinking about, I eat, sleep, breathe educational equity and equality. And I'm thinking about all of the many children that live in these projects that could have happened to, and how it could have traumatized them, and what the Newark Board of Education should do and have in place, not just grief counseling, but trauma informed care. Because I'm an adult, it traumatized me. Can you imagine that happening to a school-age child? I'll leave you all with that for a photo op.
and that becomes even more profound, right? Like, because I think in the conversations that we're going to have in the future, near future, whether it be many of our students are undocumented, right? Like, there are a lot of kids who are scared
Mhm.
of ICE being picked up, there's also all of the controversies that happen there, where you can't even know if they're telling the truth. Like you don't know, like you're saying, like no, this person is not at all affiliated with who they say they're affiliated with, and that like I believe you more than them, right? Because you are far
And
more
then
credible,
today I
unfortunately,
get a
than
call.
the state
I,
attorney general. Not, I mean,
yeah,
not
I
state attorney
received a
general, but
call
within
from the
federal
U.S.
authorities.
She's just interim. She's just interim right now. She's not even in her full capacity. And then I received a phone call from the U.S. Marshals, the deputy, who says to me, "You need to move because we'll be back." They didn't even catch the person they were looking for. But I know this because this is the second time that they've been here. So we'll talk about that. And I need to get that information to the mayor.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for sharing that with us right now. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Um, and we will have you back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Hello, welcome, Latoya Jackson. You are A10 and you are running in the school board election. Thank you for being on. We're honored to have you. Um, we'll just jump right into the controversy as we did with the other candidates. And we'll talk about the incident at Global Studies. There was, we should know, a series of incidents and accusations of anti-Blackness. Many students felt that they were targeted. Lauren Wells, the Creed, a very well-respected educator, Lauren Wells, published the Creed report, been kept under wraps for months, and she cited widespread institutional culture of anti-Blackness, where individuals feared retaliation and a conflict between Blacks and Latinos. Uh, is there, do you, what do you think about the district's response? And what do you think should be done? Um, and do you believe this is still a problem or a widespread problem within the district? You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for allowing me on here. I do watch your podcast and I'm excited to be here. And when that was going on, I was also fighting the Board of Education with what was going on with my own child. I watched all of the parents, the teachers, the staff come meeting at the meeting. And that was 2023. I watched all of that. And I also watched the board not be able to help me with what I needed from them also. And with the board member having a child in the school, and actually feeling every feeling that I felt as a parent, you know, being a parent and also on the board, I feel like there needs to be a lot of things changed with policy and also ethics, especially with what we have going on here. To be a mother and know that things are happening to your children that we are supposed to be past, like racism, is a lot. And to also have to sit on the board and keep your mouth closed and not want to compromise yourself because you have two positions. You first have your household position as being a mother and a protector and a guide, you know, the guidance to your child. And then you govern the superintendent that you're watching ignore you. So I had a problem on so many levels with all of that. But sometimes, and I would never want anybody to go through that, but sometimes it takes a person that's actually helping make change and creating policy to really understand. So I do think it's an issue. I met some of the teachers that resigned. They came to a couple of forums that we had, and it was a mess. It was traumatizing to me to know that we're in 2020 anything and we're still going through the same things that the people who showed us we stand on and fought for us, my grandmother and her grandmother, you know, and we still going through it. I think it's an issue. I think it's an issue with us having a superintendent that's also Latino that grew up in Newark. I grew up in Newark, and I went to Miller Street School, and we didn't have, I was under the leadership of Alice Z. Dunstan, and we had Latino teachers and Italian teachers and Irish teachers. And if it was any racism going on when I was growing up, I didn't experience in school, and that was my safe place. So I think it's a problem. I think it's an issue for us to know it's elephants in the room, and to be bound by policy and ethics to not be able to stand up for ourselves. I have an issue with that. I can't hear you.
What do you mean by that? If you know there's an elephant in the room and you're bound by policy.
So we all was at the meetings. The meetings are publicly broadcasted. We heard these children come meeting at the meeting for a couple of years. They still was coming last year. They were even still coming this year. And then it was a big thing with one of the board members, Ms. Haynes, also experiencing bullying with her, you know, being a mother and also having to guide her child. I don't know what she may have said or what took place to make her daughter or the other students or whoever filed a lawsuits. But I know if it came to lawsuits 2 years later, then we definitely had issues with things that we know about that wasn't addressed. And I have a problem with that.
What are some of the things that you think? Yes. What are some of the things that you think should be done or should have been done? By the way, I'm actually getting ready to step out, and Ed is going to finish the interview because in the middle, it's running a little later than I thought it would. We're also going to bring Deborah Smith-Gregory in as well. And Deborah Smith-Gregory, I'm sure she would love to jump in through the conversation as well, because I think these educational conversations are extremely important. But the last question I will ask you on that end is, what are the solutions that you think either should have been in place or that you don't think were put in place that should still be put in place? Like, I know that there have been implemented like harassment, intimidation, and bullying, like things within the district. I've had to refer students and incidents to them. We just have some really good people within our school who deal with it. But do you think that this is like that there's something more that needs to be done district-wide? What are some of your ideas on solutions or things that should have been done?
Okay, so one thing we have a restorative justice policy that is not properly being implemented. I believe that they should give us more credit as a community. Like myself, I know a lot of people in Newark, and if my son is in school and having an issue, I should be respected enough to be able to, for people to understand that I do know how to sit in the room and articulate myself. I do know how to have a decent conversation and also listen and hear from a person and resolve things. They don't give our community credit. And if I think that we have enough resources for if we need a cop or if we need a psychiatrist or if we need certain people, resources in the room at the time of a conversation, that it should be implemented so that we can not have any retaliation and we can move on from those situations. The Newark Board of Education doesn't give parents and the children that position to be able to address things and move past them. They sweep them under the rug, and then they have a policy where if I don't know what the policy is called, but if your child has a issue with someone, they won't remove the person that started the issue. You will have to remove your child. And I had several situations like that with my own son, where I had to just kind of like sit back and see how things were going to play out, because I wasn't selfish enough to make a choice to remove a child. I would have had to remove my son. So he didn't want to be removed from school, so I allowed him to be there. And then I was told that if a child is a problem, like, you know, more than likely this child would do something else and she would be removed. So just give it a minute. That within itself is traumatizing because I'm raising a young Black male. He's adult now, but I was raising a young Black male. And the things that happen to little boys in school, like if he put his hands or touch a young lady inappropriate, he will get suspended. It will be repercussions. But if a young lady touch him, it's like brushed over or, you know, took in another way where it's not as serious as if it was vice versa. So it's a lot of things that need to be addressed different ways because to me they don't make sense.
So Jonathan had another question he wanted to pose, and I'm not sure if you heard the other candidates, but the other question he wanted to pose was the population of the districts is growing, and there are new schools opening up, like the Michelle Obama School, the School of Fashion Design, is working closely with New York's Fashion School of Technology, School of Architecture and Design, and that's going to open in September. And as you know, Ryan Gates, who is moving to Newark, will soon open a school for film. The superintendent and the Newark are close to a 7-year or into a 7-year, 10-year plan. What really needs to be improved, and what are you most proud of?
Can you repeat the last part? I heard the improve, but the last part, please.
So what are you most proud
of? I had a conversation with my sister and I told her if I had a choice, I would throw the whole system away. And she told me that we cannot do that because people have worked on things. And when you begin to understand the work, you would try to add on and not just do away with it because people have actually worked. So right now, I'm not proud with the Newark Board of Education with a lot of things. I'm not understanding why we are still opening up schools when our children are failing in a lot of different areas. And also we don't have enough students in the schools that we already have, the neighborhood schools. I believe in neighborhood schools. And that's what created a door for all of these charter schools. And I don't agree with charter schools. I'm not a fan of them, but I do want equal education across the board for all of our children. I'm being honest as I can possibly be. I'm not understanding why we spending all of this money when we have initiatives that are good initiatives that can be supported, and we don't understand how to support these things. So I'm really not a fan or proud of the things that's going on from a parent perspective, because that's what I am. I'm not an educator. I am a parent.
So let me ask you a question. When you say neighborhood schools, are you saying neighborhood school in a sense of what other folks are calling community schools? Is that the same, or is that a different idea?
I like community schools, but I was very proud of the school that I went to, my neighborhood school, which was Miller Street School. It's now a shelter. It was not a felon school. The community should have actually sued the district for closing that school. It was a very good school. The children wasn't felon. And I believe we have schools that we are partnering now with charter schools to fill up, and we can fill up our schools with the right support and the right initiatives. I'm not understanding. I know our local control was taken and given back to us, but I'm not understanding why we are not focusing on what we already have and trying to build that up when we don't have the capacity to even have enough school students enrolled in these schools. And then we have like that October 15th cutoff where the charter schools are able to enroll all our children. and then push them back to us. Like when they push them back, we should be able to fill the schools up that we already have. Like we have a lot going on. I'm not understanding. And I also have teachers getting in touch with me, saying they're opening 5 more schools. I haven't even, I didn't negotiate my contract right. We need, for Quitman Street, for example, like we have a lot of needs in the schools that we already have. I'm not understanding why we're not putting the resource into what we already have and then trying to build off of that.
So then what are some of the good initiatives you do support?
Can you say that again?
So then what are some of the initiatives?
Oh, okay. So it's like I believe West Kenny, I'm not sure if they changed the name of that school. They do have a good culinary program. Shabazz has a good cosmetology program. I do support those initiatives, but they also need support. I have teachers. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, and I have a teacher that teach cosmetology that needs help. So I'm not understanding why we're not focusing on making the things that we already have successful instead of starting something up that's going to take away from what we can be making successful. So I believe like video games and being an influencer is okay, but I feel like we need more doctors, we need more lawyers, we need more social workers, we need more musicians, we need more people and more of the culture that we have experienced so our children could be successful.
Okay, and so let's also then talk about, I'm sure you probably heard them talk about Vote 16, and I'm sure you know about that because I did get an opportunity to see you on one of their panels at the movie theater. So what do you think about Vote 16? Vote 16 is about the importance of democracy in education. However, as you know, charter schools have zero democratic accountability. A few years ago, North Star students posted they want mayor's office discipline or to find who had the power or who was in charge with politicians. So what power or what do you think Vote 16, the outcome of these students, are they going to have any more power?
So I do like the idea of Vote 16, but I don't think it was well thought out. I'm in the neighborhood, like boots on the ground. I walk around the city, I don't drive. So me being a candidate, knowing the children, I ask questions. A lot of seniors did 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds that were qualified to be able to vote, didn't even know, even after the governor came, after the mayor did. And before the governor showed up, I called Nancy Darian to ask her who was in charge. She wasn't able to give me a name. She basically said Roger Leon had one, it was supposed to be a young lady. Last night I found out it was supposed to be a young man, but it was supposed to be one young lady that was in charge of the entire district with making sure that the children would be registered. And I had issues with that. I wanted to know if because I'm a candidate, and a lot of times with this particular election is not fair if you're an independent candidate. So I wanted to know things like who was registering them, were the teachers involved, how were they being registered, according to the rules of what will make you a candidate. I knew they couldn't actually run, but if they are registered voters, then why couldn't they run if they wanted to? So I had a lot of questions. I think that it should have been more thought about. I know North Star, I did find out that North Star was heavy on the Vote 16, that they were trying to register children that didn't even live in Newark. It's, you don't have to live in Newark to go to North Star. So it was a young lady from East Orange that had an issue with why do they keep trying to make my child register when she's not even a Newark resident? So it's a lot of things that I believe that they should have worked out, but I don't have a problem with anybody being able to vote. If you can read and comprehend, then I believe you should be able to vote. And I also think it was a good thing for our community, especially with our young Black males, because if they get any charges, and I have sons, like I have one that I thought I did everything and he would not be in the system, and he is in the system. But if they do make a mistake, with all of these systems being backed up, at least they'll be able to be registered to vote early. So that was like the pros to me, that we can get them registered early so it wouldn't be taken away from them. But I don't like this process at all. I don't think it's fair. Me being an independent candidate, I had to do things very strategically for me to be able to be seen. And also, my mission this year is to bring out the community, to bring out the hood. I have heard a lot about, and I know a lot of people don't believe in the system and feel like people are playing in their face, but that's what I've been doing, trying to get the people out that they don't believe to vote. And I've been telling them things like this election is as important as a presidential election, because it is. This determines our future for the next 10 to 15 years. They totally capitalize off of our communities. If our children can't read, if they can't read, comprehend, or if they are not successful, then they are not going to do well, which means we may have to support them in mental institutions or incarceration. And that's something that I definitely don't want to happen, because I'm experiencing that now. And from where I sit, experiencing the different, these different systems, it don't feel right. And I just thank God that I got the strength, courage, and wisdom to keep going and to keep wanting to love on my community and to keep fighting for my community. But like yesterday, I had a headache because I'm tired of the BS. I'm tired of showing up and having to be politically correct when it doesn't feel like that. So I'm running as my authentic self. I'm running as community, and I'm speaking for the people that don't know how yet to articulate themselves, don't know the right things to say, don't know what they should actually be angry with and not angry with. And it's a lot. It's a lot to watch this democratic process, know that it's not fair, have to sit back and make it look pretty when I'm sitting in from my view, it's not pretty at all. It's very heartbreaking for me to see what's going on in my community, especially with our children, because growing up, school was my safe place. When I had dysfunction in my house too, but when I went to school, I had a bunch of leaders that surrounded me and supported me. And I just don't feel like giving up on my community or giving up on our children is the answer, or minding my business. I really feel like some of these things that we're not talking about because we are scared that we may shake the table. I believe in this moment that it's definitely time for us to start addressing the elephants in the room. Like, we know what's going on. We have a 14-year-old that they're trying to wave up for, and in the federal system, when the federal system has a death penalty, and our state doesn't have a death penalty. So it's things like that with me raising young Black males and me having a husband that I want to support my community and also show people how we should be supporting our community and what we should be doing, how we should actually be standing up, the things that we should be saying in this moment. It's very important that we don't miss this moment by us trying to worry about what perception is, unless we worrying about how God is perceiving us.
Yeah, let me say that we are going to have the family of that 14-year-old on the show, along with a couple of the activists that are trying to block the 14 from being moved up. So that's full disclosure for another show coming up. But I wanted to ask you, this around, as a board member, as you know, 1/3 of the budget goes to the charter schools. What's your view on that? Since they have no oversight, what's your view on that?
I remember when it was 2 charter schools, I believe maybe 3, the one on Green Street, Lady Liberty, where I sent my son, and North Star. And they painted this picture of our children being educated, and I bought right on, I jumped right in when I feel like I should have knew better, because I knew what I had from public schools. I don't like it. I don't like that we allocate a bunch of funds to the charter schools and we have no say. I don't like the way that they teach our children. I don't like it's like the prison, the pipeline. I don't like it. I don't like anything about charter school, the way they run a board, they have no transparency. A lot of the charter school parents try to talk to me, and I really don't know what to say to them, because if you bring up a situation to a board member or to the superintendent, we're trying. And that's heartbreaking, because I believe that we're not trying hard enough to actually do the things that we can do. I don't like it.
Okay. Ms. Gregory, is there anything you want to add or you want to ask our candidate? So let me also then
I think you covered all the questions.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is one of the questions Jonathan was asking all of the other candidates. What about your bio? So what's in your biography that prepares you for this job?
I stand on business. It's simple. I understand the power of the parent. I have seen what me opening my mouth, writing emails, being persistent, and standing on business will do. So my biography, my whole life is standing on business and making sure that we get what we need for our children. One thing that I always say is I'm not playing with anybody, and I don't want anybody playing with me. And right now, I feel like Roger Leone is playing with us, that he's playing with our children. And I definitely, my biography in a nutshell, 3 words, stand on business. That's me. And I got you.
So our final question would be, I'm sure you probably heard, and so you now know that we are the #1 political hip hop radio talk show. We've been broadcasting for like 17 years now. And so, what hip hop song or artist that you listen to that motivates you or keeps you going, particularly as you do this work?
I like a couple of them. Tupac is my favorite, but Nas, one song, I know I can be what I want to be. If I work hard at it, I'll be where I want to be. So I love Nas. That would be my favorite song.
So why don't you tell the people then? Thank you for that. Nas is one of our favorite artists, as well as Public Enemy on this show. So what is your slate? How can people find you on the ballot?
You said what is my slate?
Yeah, your ballot. Like, where can they find you on the ballot?
I'm Latoya Jackson, and I'm A10 on the ballot. My handles on social media is L Jackson Salon, and on Facebook I'm Latoya Tucker, because I am married, but my brand is L Jackson. So my husband didn't have a problem with me using my maiden name for me running in the election, so I kept it. So people wouldn't be confused.
And what did you say that letter number is? Say it again.
It's A10, and the 3 words that I use, my catchphrase is "I got you."
Okay. Well, listen, Ms. Jackson, we want to thank you very much for coming on the show. You got a famous name, so no one's going to forget your name.
I hope not.
They're going to remember that.
And I thank you. I thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
for, inviting me on here, and also for having this show for us.
You're welcome, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks. So, Ms. Gregory, there it is. I mean, those some of the candidates that are running in the school board election. I believe is perhaps one of our most important elections coming up, particularly because we have those 16-year-olds that are going to be involved for the very first time in our city. As it relates to them being able to vote for the first time. I tell you, I wish that that would have been an opportunity for me when I was coming up, to be involved in voting, because when I was coming through, I mean, Eugene Campbell, was my principal in school at Marcus Garvey, which later was Robert Treat, which became Marcus Garvey, which was one of the first schools Amiri Baraka taught at. When I was a child. And I can remember when Eugene Campbell took over the Board of Education and all the things that were trying to go on. I could only imagine, because at that time, most of the kids, when I came up in the 70s, we were politically active. So I could only imagine, if we were given the right to vote. So I would hope that these kids would since they have access to far more information than we did then, and they walk around, as with a computer in their hand, so they can fact check everybody, right? They can just check everything. So I think that it is a huge opportunity for them. One, yes, to get involved in local politics and the school board and have some sort of say so. I would hope that this translate into them becoming lifelong voters and get involved in every area of voting, particularly in our city, not only locally but nationally, and be able to do that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I want to say that this was an extremely important show around education, and it allows the viewers to hear from the candidates who came on in a different way. The NAACP Newark holds the first candidates forum in March. We tend to be the first ones to come out. We've been doing it for 12 years, and the field was a large field. There are 10 candidates. And so when you're trying to hear from 10 candidates in 2 hours, it does not leave a lot of room for extended conversation from any one of them. I also attended the school board forum yesterday at University High School, which was for students only, which was led by students and were for students. And again, because there were, I think, 9 there, there was not a lot of room for prolonged conversations. This particular show gave the candidates an opportunity to speak at length and for voters to hear what they think, what they're standing for, and what they hope to do. And so you and Jonathan are truly to be commended for this program. I hope that there's a lot of rotation with this program that the candidates will use, as well as the general population. What I want to say, and even with the Vote 16, it is the idea is a good one. And to your point, the students have the opportunity to become activists. I think that voter education is key. I think in you allowing the candidates to speak frankly and have the questions that you had, it gave us a glimpse, if you will, into each one of them. And I just want to thank you for that. And then I want to put the challenge to the audience. The school board election is one of the most poorly attended elections in Newark in particular. 3% of registered voters come out to vote in this very important election, where we say that our children are our future. Our children should lead the way. We talk about our children, and then our talk and our walk are not in alignment. And to say that I don't have a child in school is to be very self-serving and self-centered. Because if you live in Newark, the children's education has a direct impact on you, whether you think so or not, whether you have a kid in school or not. We have to show up. One of the reasons for the students being engaged, the two students that really championed this are from Science Park. One of the reasons was that we were not coming out, number one, which said that we really don't care about student issues. So the idea that students will care more about the issues and the type of education and the concerns that they have and come out to vote. And yes, it should lead to them being lifelong voters, but we all have a role to play. We cannot abdicate the responsibility of voting because now it's vote 16 and the students will come out and vote. No, every registered voter has a responsibility and an obligation to come out to vote. 3% is an abomination. It says we don't care. And finally, the last thing that I would want to say is that this experiment is just that. It is an experiment with vote 16. And as a result, experiments do take time to yield the results that are being looked for. So we can't expect that this particular election on Tuesday, April 15th, that there were 2,200 students that were registered to vote. There probably would have been more had partner organizations been able to come into the schools and register students as well. But out of those 2,200 students that are registered to vote, we cannot think that 2,200 students are going to come out to vote. And we surely better not be critical and say, well, look, only a few of them came out to vote. How dare we when only 3% of us come out to vote? We have to be mindful of that. So I just want to thank you. I'm glad that I stayed on. I love the segment with the speech and debate, because we need the students to be engaged in activities like future educators, like student government for real, like speech and debate, because it's not about just, I kept hearing the reading, writing, and the science. We must be creative and innovative about how information is transferred to our young people. We can't just think that how we learn through looking in a book and listening to what the teacher said, and that's the only way to learn. We have to be creative, and we can't just lean on technology. We have to lean on technology and be creative and be open all at the same time. And so I look forward to coming back. You and Jonathan, you definitely did a community service this evening, and I just want to thank you.
Well, no. Thank you, Ms. Gregory. I mean, obviously, your work precedes you in terms of what you do in the community, and everybody know that you everywhere when it comes to you that involve this city. So we thank you.
I want to sign off with this though. My favorite hip hop artist. I don't know how many he had, but I know that I was able to plug him into, we did a get out the vote and we put him on. And when we saw the homeboys on the corner and they heard that, they said, wow. And I said, look, this is America. This is America, Donald Glover. This is America. You got to get out and vote because this is America and you got a job to do. So
wow.
That's what.
Well, listen, thank you. But before you leave, I got to ask you this though. If you could indulge me, just around that conversation we were having around speech and debate, right? You alluded to it, but because you understand that not all of our kids are going to be great basketball players, right? Or great football players. Some of us are going to have to be the thinkers. But the problem is that we don't, and I think what was being said is we don't have enough Jonathan Austins, right? So if we don't have enough Jonathan Austins, how do we implement speech and debate, right, in every school so that those kids can be at least taught those skills, right? Because I think that for me, what helped me be successful in college was, because I didn't get this in high school, but when I got to college and then eventually law school and the things I've learned, it was my ability to be able to leave the class and go to the library and spend, that 4 to 6 hours in the library and then go to the party, right? Because those 4 to 6 hours that I spent in the library, right, it gave me the confidence the next day when I went into class and I talked to the professor, or he would call on me and I'm in a sea of white kids. It gave me the confidence because I not only did I do the research, but I knew the answers. And so I didn't have to go sit in the back of the room, Miss Gregory. I literally could sit in the front of the class. And I would dare him to call me. I would say, I dare you to call me. And 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't call, but I always went to class prepared, right? But it was those skills that Jonathan and our other guest was talking about when they said that if you learn speech and debate, you have to learn how to do research. And that's important, right? So that you're prepared. Why do you think we don't have that readily available to all of our students in the city of Newark? Why do you think we don't have that?
Well, we have programs. So I have been working with a program for the last almost 40 years. It's called the Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics, also known as ACT-SO. And it falls under the categories of humanities, visual and performing arts, and STEM. And one of the categories is oratory. And in oratory, we have the students to write their own oratory as opposed to memorizing. There are programs, but they don't get they're not sexy, so they don't get the same kind of play, if you will, that the March Madness gets, right? People who don't even talk about college football any other time talk about college football during March Madness. And so there are more Jonathans because we are a continuum. It's not, we can never think that it's only one. We just have to keep reaching back and providing the space for someone to step into the role and be open and not hold on to it. Speech and debate is not as popular as it was in Newark because it takes the exact same things that they were talking about: commitment, challenges, discipline. You had discipline when you went to work, doing the research in the library. You had the discipline to do that and then party. It's
Right.
prioritizing too. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna hit the books for a couple hours, then I'm gonna go have me some fun.
Right.
And it's that. And so with the students still have it. I see them. I work with them. They still have it. They need more discipline, self-discipline, and discipline from us, so that they know that they cannot submit an AI generated paper
Right.
and think that we don't know the difference.
Right. Right. And
You
you
got
know,
this, America, huh? You got that? Come on.
and you know what's funny, Miss Gregory, is that when I was in college, students tried to get away with that too, where they would actually, have some sort of program, write their paper for them. And the professors had programs too, where they would actually put your paper through that program and be able to tell whether or not you wrote it or you didn't write it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but now you're right, there's a lot more technology where it's AI generated. But I venture to say that those skills I learned by being able to go to the library, actually learning how to go find a book, right? Actually going through the aisles.
It led you to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, I found it to be very valuable. And so for me, I find pleasure, because I've got a couple of young men. My wife will tell you that, that I kind of, help get through life, help get through college, and guys who thought that they would never go to college and much less be successful, and then much less make the kind of money they make today, right? And to say that they made it through academics, one young man who is very successful, he says to me all the time, he says, he said, when I would come by your house, man, he said, I used to always wonder why your degrees were in your house and not at your job, right? And I said that they didn't matter as much to those folks as they mattered to the young men like you all when y'all would come watch football games, right? Or y'all would watch fights at the house. Y'all would see those degrees and y'all would say, wow, man, you went to that school? Yo, man, you earned that degree. See, that meant something to you. Those people, the companies and the places I worked at, it didn't really matter to them. But and it helped you all dream. And now you all have those same degrees, if not more degrees than I got, right? But I used to always say, Miss Gregory, when I was in college, I would always tell people that the degrees didn't guarantee me an opportunity to be picked, to be on nobody's team. What it meant is I was qualified to be picked, to be on.
Exactly.
That's all it meant, right? And so so even now, when I look at young men and I see that they don't take the time to study, or they don't take the time to take advantage of the library the way I did, the thing I tell them is, and this is why I think speech and debate is so important, is to me, because just like that young man I saw the other day, who is bright and as smart and as educated as he is, his teachers will never know, because he never takes the time to let people hear him. And I said, hey, man, I said, you got to, pull your pants up, too, but you got to let people hear you. I said, you're a smart kid. And he walked away from me, Miss Gregory, right, with another level of step and bounce that I had not seen, right? Because somebody like me that didn't know him would actually say that about him.
And that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. Our community needs to be community.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about whether it's your kid or not, because the kids they will learn from us, and they want to hear from us, even when they don't think so. It's just that we have so much to give to them. And if you give to 2 and I give to 2 and Friday Rhino gives to 2, and we keep it growing, and we pull them together collectively, and we give them an opportunity to see and meet one another and be with like-minded people and be like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. But again, I tell you that I think we can win. I just think that we've got to win together, right?
Absolutely, yes.
We've got to do it together, and there's never been a time, I think, in our culture and history when we did. Malcolm said that the times and conditions will cause us to come together. These are the times and these are the conditions. So, Ms. Gregory, thank you very much for staying with us.
All right.
You for
it was
hanging
a
out.
pleasure. So is you gonna play something?
DJ Rhino.
You gonna play something?
What's going on?
I made a request.
DJ Rhino, you know Ms. Gregory?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I made a request because you got something on, right? You gonna put something on, right?
Oh well, not on YouTube. They'll shut us down if we play it on YouTube.
Oh, say no more.
Yeah.
Been there. Okay, you're
yeah,
right.
When we get back to the studio, we'll
okay. So I'll just say, this is America. This is America.
Oh yeah, with Childish Gambino. This is America.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that song.
Yes,
because
that song, we just have to know where we are and what's going on, and then pull together because we know what to do. We just it's in our spirit. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care, Ms. Gregory.
Okay, you too.
What's good, Rhino?
What's going on, bro?
Good, man. Haven't seen you in a month of Sundays, brother.
Yeah, man. Just dealing with life, taking care of things.
I hear you.
I know we only got a few minutes. I just wanted to stop in and say that Ice Cube finally got a green light for his last installment for the Friday saga, which you see on my shirt right here. And today's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. But yeah, Ice Cube had the Friday saga. It was Friday, then next Friday, then Friday after next, and for years, they were wondering, if there was going to be a sequel, if there's going to be a last Friday,
right?
And so for a long time, that was kind of like, just kind of like, wandering. It was kind of just drifting. He was waiting for a deal. I think Warner Brothers turned him down a couple of times. Turned the scripts down a couple of times, but finally Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema has checked off on it. So now they're moving forward. Yeah, so that's going to be pretty cool to see, man. It's going to be called Last Friday, which is cool. The only the thing is, man, it's been so long since we saw, since the last movie, the last installment, which was Friday After Next. A lot of things have changed. People have gotten older. We've lost some members of the original cast. We no longer have John Witherspoon, who played Pops.
Right.
No more Tiny Lister, who played Debo.
Right.
Ronaldo Ray, who played Red's father. Anthony Johnson, who played Azal. Bernie Mac, who played Preacher Man. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of folks that's not here anymore from the original ones. But I would say the one who we would probably miss the most is Pops, John Witherspoon, because he was in all three of those movies. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna miss Spoon, and it's just I'm wondering how they're gonna play it out, being that everybody's gotten so much older. I heard that they have one of the Young Comics, DC Young Fly. He's supposed to be playing Smokey's son. Smokey was Chris Tucker's character.
And what's going on with Chris Tucker? Because remember, he said that he couldn't do the movies because he don't want to smoke weed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they figure how to work that into the script. But Chris Tucker is definitely, he's on board. Mike Epps is on board. Cat Williams is on board. So it's going to be interesting to see. Cube also has his son in the movie too. So I'm wondering if he's going to be playing his son in the movie, or if he's just going to play a whole different character. But it's going to be interesting to see, though.
It took New Line Cinema long enough, man, to greenlight it. Yeah, it's a wonder why. I don't know if Cube owns it, but it would seem that when he had that whole franchise hot, he could have just kept going.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that was when he was having the issues with Chris Tucker.
Okay.
You know, and
yeah, he couldn't sell it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's so so he got the green light on that, man. So I'm definitely looking for, because I've been waiting years to see if they were going to actually pull that off and do a Last Friday movie.
Yeah,
so
me
I'm
too.
definitely going to be looking forward to that. Also, I just want to drop a rest in peace to one of the founding members of the Soul Sonic Force. You know, the Soul Sonic Force was Africa Bambaata's group. Those were the ones who put out Planet Rock and Looking for the Perfect Beat, Renegades of Funk, and so many others. Rest in peace to Powwow. Powwow was the brother that you always saw who had the native headdress with the feathers. Anytime you heard there was going to be a Soul Sonic Force, I always looked for Powwow. I always looked for that Indian headdress, that native headdress, you know.
Right.
And Powwow, you know, he was one of the originals, one of the original members of Soul Sonic Force. He was one of the original members of the Zulu Nation, the Zulu Kings. And if you know, the Zulu Kings used to be the Black Spades, came from gang culture, and they turned things around and created the culture of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And Powwow was one of those early members. So, man, it's a huge loss losing him, and we want to say rest in peace to Powwow of Soul Sonic Force. But that's it for me, man. You can check me out tomorrow. I'm back with the Crate Sessions. Check me out tomorrow, 1 p.m. I'm doing an all 45 session, all vinyl. Check me out 1 p.m. twitch.tv /Rhino CMZ. That's tomorrow, 1 p.m.
All right. And Rhino, before we go, I wanted to ask you, I saw something on the news tonight that they wanted to get rid of one of the original graffiti murals in the Bronx. I don't know if you heard about it, but, it was, at the birth of hip hop. And, everyone is fighting to try to not let the city take down the mural. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't, but just hearing that reminds me of that mural in Queens, 5 Points. Remember 5 Points in Queens? Yeah, all of the graffiti. Yeah, I remember people were fighting for that, and they ended up taking the paint, all of the murals down. They painted over and everything.
Yeah, I think that and I remember they tried to do that in Brooklyn with Biggie, where they tried to take down his mural. Right.
Yeah.
I think that what people forget is that because hip hop played such a vital role in American culture, and I think that's what they forget. It's American culture, right? It's not just Black culture that these folks might be looking at and trying to say, do it around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion or something. Mm-hmm. But that is American culture, right? Because you got to, and I'm sure you're gonna remember this, Rhino. You remember when Lauryn Hill was hot. One of the reports that was done by the Time magazine, they said that they found that hip hop was supported more so financially by white kids than it was by Black kids.
Yeah,
financially, right? Because we were sampling it and we were taking it off of those shows that would come on WBLS and all of that. Remember, we would use our tapes to do it. These kids would go buy it.
Right.
So it's American culture, right?
Yes. And as soon as you make an attack on hip hop, you're making an attack on American culture and all of those people, like you said, and all of those white folks as well.
Yeah.
Who were impacted by the culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hopefully, people see what's going on and they stand up and start making some statements.
I would hope so, man.
Yeah.
I would hope so. But Rhino, man, appreciate you coming through to do your segment, man. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
So, we're going to try to put some plans forward to, get back out and do some things, man, so that people can hear you. So those are the plans. But listen, man, we want to thank everybody who came through tonight. Of course, we want to thank all of those people who came on around the whole education, you know, campaign that's going on right now, where, you know, we've got all these different candidates that are running. So we hope you all had an opportunity to hear from some of them and saw, you know, what their particular you know, slates are and where to go find them, you know, on the ballot. So we hope y'all go out and support those that you heard tonight, that you find that fits in line with what it is you believe about education in our city. And then, of course, we want to thank everyone else who came through, all of our other guests. We appreciate y'all coming through. We appreciate Ms. Gregory with the NAACP for sticking with us for the excuse me, for the whole night. And then, of course, we thank our brother DJ Rhino for coming through with the hip hop segment tonight, and to all of the other guests, you know, to all of our other co-hosts. I know Jonathan had to leave. All of our co-hosts who are off tonight, you know, of course, brother Zaid and Donna. You know, on behalf of all of them, we just say good night and thank you. And as my brother Zaid like to says, we'll catch y'all next week, and we'll catch you in the whirlwind. Peace.
Peace.